Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Life of Love. We're here today with a very special guest, Dr. Lynn Carey. She has come to us from sunny Miami, and we're really excited to have her share her life's voyage. She's been on a quest for love and individuality and seeking the highest expression of life. And so we're kindred spirits in that quest. And, you know, being curious about what else there is. I mean, there's no complacency with either of us, so it's been a really big delight to get to know Dr. Lynn and share in our unique yet similar perspectives on life and living. And so I'm really excited. She's lived a passionate life, and she's dedicated to helping others heal through their journeys, and realizing that our health and our finances are intertwined, and life is all connected. It's not work and then have a good life. You have to do them at the same time. So she's an entrepreneur, and she's a warrior for us being more happy. So without further ado, thanks for being here, Dr. Lynn.
Oh, it's an honor to be here, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for sharing. And you've been on quite a journey with being a chiropractor, and you had some childhood illnesses, and so you've really gone and you've traveled and you've sought out answers. So if you could just give my audience a little background as to major like pinpoints of your or major highlights of your journey, and what brought you here to this day. It's very exciting to look at your journey.
Well, I think my whole life I questioned that there had to be more to life than what I was being shown. And that definitely, I believe, manifested as the disease as scoliosis that I was diagnosed with in when I was 14, with my spine as an S-shaped curve. Because the emotion behind it is your spine is going in two directions. Well, you feel like you're being pulled in two directions. It could be your parents are going in two directions, or um, you're going in two directions. Like society, my mom, my family, the religion, everything was telling me this is the way life is. But something deeper in me knew there had to be more, because I was miserable. I felt like I was in a prison. And so I do believe that split caused the scoliosis. But I just didn't know anything about that then. I just knew I had to do what the medical world told me. That's all I knew. And I ended up having Harrington rod surgery. So I had the rods put in my spine at 15, and I never had symptoms before. But afterwards, it just left me, they said the surgery was a success. Everything looked normal. But then I was sick and in pain on and off for years afterwards, where they didn't know what to do with me. They had no answers for me. And so I was just in college trying to find myself, because I was told you go to college to be successful in life, which I hated school. So I just kept doing what I had to do. And someone told me to look into chiropractic as a profession. I didn't know what it was, but I read the information on it, and it said the power that made the body heals the body. And it was the first time I ever heard truth. There was something deeper in it, and it just made me go. I didn't even get adjusted. I just went to chiropractic school, and it changed my life. It was the beginning of a spiritual journey for me.
Wow, because I just assumed that you went to a chiropractor to get some relief. I got your book, but I haven't gotten to that whole chapter on that. Wow, so you're just like, yeah, you knew at a soul level you needed to become. Did you already have your bachelor's disease? I just called it a bachelor's disease.
Yeah, that's kind of a subliminal message there. That's how I feel like the degrees are
I'm
equated to
reading
diseases.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, Lynn.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you already have your bachelor degree
No,
then from school?
I had a year and a half of undergraduate school, and the school I went to let me finish my bachelor's at the same time that I got my doctorate. So I got a bachelor's in nutrition along with my doctorate in chiropractic at the same time. It was like a full-time program that we had, and a lot of the classes overlapped. So I was just able to knock it all out.
Well, that was a really good path for you, since you didn't really enjoy school anyway. But then,
Right. Yeah, because if
so
I went 4 years and then had to go another 4 years, I would want to hang myself. So
did you find yourself specializing in scoliosis, or just
no,
general, or?
no, because actually what happened when I went to chiropractic school, the whole idea, well, actually even it started there, but then when I got into practice, the whole idea of disease just dissolved for me. And I really believe in it. And at the time, this is in the late 90s, early 2000s, I didn't have verbiage for this. I didn't have backing for this, even channeled messages. I didn't have any of it. But what I figured out for myself was that there is no disease, that we're creating it with our consciousness, our belief system, and the whole medical system. And I realized that was way too far out for most people to comprehend, because there's a lot of emotion and whole drama, lifestyle dramas around people's sickness and their disease. And a lot of it's a crutch for people because they don't really want to dive into the deeper issues going on. It's socially acceptable. But I realized we're all energy. Everything can heal. And I really didn't know what to do with that information. I was like, okay, I really have to tread lightly with this because people are going to think I'm crazy. And most people weren't even ready to hear my message of that we just heal ourselves, like basic little things like let the fever run its course. Don't take a pill to suppress it because the body's doing what it has to do. I have my child at home birth. Like, we got to get out of the hospitals because they're causing more harm with the birth trauma. So it was like at that time, I realized so many people weren't ready to hear what I was saying. And I was going deeper and deeper, I felt like, into this awakening of the illusion of it all. So it was a lot. It was a lot to kind of process. But I don't even think in terms of disease. Like, even for me to label myself as someone who has scoliosis, it feels like the old me, like the lifetime. I mean, I know my spine still feels like that, but like I don't think in those terms. I don't even think like when my body gets symptomatic, I don't think in disease terms. It's just like, oh, my energy's low. I need to rebalance myself. I need to, pull my energy back in. I don't think in terms of sickness and disease. So.
Oh, there's so much to unpack there. There's so much. I know that we have systems that bring us comfort, and when those systems break down, it takes a lot of courage to question, because there's livelihood involved. There's faith. There's faith that other people are going to make good choices, ethical choices based on the common good. And then you have ego, and you have people who are trying to stay in abundance, but they're not considering that their choices aren't for the common good, that they're just looking at a bank account. And I understand that there's lots of people with traumas, and they want approval, and to question and say you might be wrong puts them in a place where they don't feel approved. And then they get defensive, and it brings back these primal things of acceptance or rejection. And if you're not accepted, then you're cast out. And, so there's so many layers of trauma that we're working through that there's no question that there's a major awakening and reckoning, honestly.
That you brought up so many things, just what you said there. I think what was the beginning of my real life journey, I believe, is when I got out and opened my practice, because I was really ignorance on fire. I knew chiropractic changed my life. It wasn't that the adjustments itself changed my life. It was a very slow process. I had pain for a few years in chiropractic school, on and off still, that would get really bad. So, but I lost the fear that my body wouldn't heal. I knew I became empowered because I saw what the medical world knew. So that took them off the pedestal for me, because I realized they didn't know. They only know how to drug it or cut it out. They really didn't understand healing. But I also understood what healing is. It's the life force. We don't really do it. There's a God force or a life force inside us that's always running. So I had more faith in that at the end because of my own personal experience. So I got out, and I just I really thought I was going to get out and change the world. I wanted to go back to my hometown, and I thought people aren't happy. They're suffering, and this is an empowerment thing. But when I got into practice, I already felt the limitations of practice. I had to pay rent on my office, and I thought, how many people do I have to adjust to just pay the rent in this building? Like that already, I can already feel the limitations of that, because I didn't get into it for money. I never thought about the money. Like everybody says, to build it, it will come. Well, and then I felt like, am I going to be stuck in these four walls of my office for how long? I'm 23 years old. Like, how long am I going to sit here like this? And I saw other colleagues of mine who were very principled, passionate chiropractors get out and open up and start doing things in their office for money because insurance paid or to get more people in and to make them stay, right? Because they had overhead, they had school loans, and I understood that. But I thought I can't compromise myself for money, Like I can't do what they're doing. To me that goes against, you're putting more fear into the world than creating this bright light. So talk about, slamming into the matrix. Like as soon as I got out and opened my practice, I was questioning all these things, let alone people walking into my office. What I really saw was like, it's their lifestyle that's killing them. Their mindset, they're not happy. They're going to a job they hate every day. They don't have enough time. They don't have enough money. They can't afford to do alternative things to heal themselves. I'm like, what in the world have we set up for ourselves as humanity that we call this life? So talk about going against all systems and structures. It was like layers and layers, and everything is interconnected.
Wow. And then the whole idea that the power to heal is within you, but if the message isn't ready to be received, you're banging up against a wall. You're just sitting here going, what? Because you can't convince somebody the power to heal is within them. They have to feel it. And I wanted to talk to you about this, the faith and grace, and how those two ideas are intertwined. A major component of getting to that state is knowing that God makes no mistakes, and that there's this grand design, and you're perfect the way you are. You just have to find that joy. You have to find what resonates with you and where your sweet spot is, and then things happen for you and through you. Until then, you're gnashing your teeth against a stone, and there's a reason you're gnashing your teeth, because you're not doing what God put you here for. And I don't want to get righteous or all holy, and I'm not a huge religious person, but I am spiritual, and I have felt the difference between fighting what my divinity is and what brings me joy versus fulfilling a role that makes you feel like a hamster on a wheel. And you're going to hit a wall, or like you said, your body's going to show signs of sickness because you've ignored it, or you're living in a dual paradigm, and you can't live on two different. I mean, you can't fight these forces. One's going to win. Either you're going to break down or you're going to heal. And so I know that your dad was really instrumental in you having faith, and you having grace. And so, yeah, can you shine some light on how you found grace, and maybe how faith was involved with that?
Yeah. So I was raised Catholic, and I never bought into the dogma, but I always felt a presence of God, but not a judgy God. Like I think I was more afraid of my mother and her beliefs than, I didn't feel like God was judging me, and I didn't buy into all the stuff they were telling us that you have to, all the rituals and stuff to be a Catholic. I never really bought into that. But my father ended up dying when I was 12. He was diagnosed with cancer, and it only took him 9 months. And I really saw him. I mean, basically the medical world just helped him out. Like they just basically killed him, if you ask me, with all the poisons, the chemo, all the stuff. I mean, he deteriorated. His legs, I was 12 years old. His legs were as big as mine by the time he died. He was in a coma. So it was really a horrible way to go out. And so I saw that. So there was a relief from his suffering when he passed. But I do believe he was an entrepreneur all of his life, and he failed over and over. And I believe he died of heartbreak. He didn't have the right support system around him you need a support system when you're an entrepreneur, really, an emotional support system, because it's a personal growth journey to keep going and to get through the limiting beliefs so you can create what you're trying to create, because we are all creators. And when you're around people who are saying, just go get a job to support yourself because we have to survive, that's a whole different vibration. So he had a very low energy my whole life. Like I saw him, I think 5 was when he finally lost everything. And then he was going to work at a nighttime job that just depleted him. He was sleeping during the day. And so by the time, I was 12, he was diagnosed with, or 11, he was diagnosed with cancer. By the time I was 12, he died. And I just knew that there was something better than here. And I was told there was a heaven. It sounded like this utopia. And I thought, well, he's in a better place and he left me here in hell. That's exactly how I felt. And I was angry that he left me. But I wanted to go with him, you know. But at the same point, he gave me the gift of learning how to live because I really didn't have the fear. I see people around me, they really have the fear of death. They have the fear of being left alone. They have all these things. I don't have that. And I know it's because of the gift of his death. And I always felt his presence guiding me. Like it just, you know, it's kind of almost like one of the worst things that can happen to you. You lose a parent when you're young because you feel that survival is pulled away from you. It can be bad in a way because I can use it in a negative way because I'm kind of like a loner. You know, I don't conform to the things. You know, I kind of isolate myself sometimes. But at the other time, it freed me to really live fully. So I always say that he really gave me I think he was more of a parent in the spirit world than he could have been here in the physical world. And I really do take that as a gift.
And I did appreciate that when you had questions or you said you had too much homework, your dad would be the one who'd go in and say, hey, you know, is this necessary? And he'd confront the nuns at the Catholic school. And so maybe he did instill that ability, even though he had to link into the system to provide. He was always questioning, and he made sure that you were heard and that your voice was important. And you do talk about that, how your voice is your
Yeah.
power.
He definitely was someone who listened to me. I wish it'd be interesting to see as an adult the difference because my mother never listened to me. Like she is in her own world still to this day. She's 91 years old and still in her own bubble. And that's been a challenge for me because I've never felt heard or seen in my true sense. You know, it's like I had to conform to what she wanted. But my father he did listen to me. He was like my voice. So when I lost that, I think that's been my journey too, is to get my voice back because I didn't have someone championing me to have my own voice. So
Makes you happy, and how that's such an important question for everybody. You know, it's not indulgent, it's
well, it's
necessary.
indulgent in my Italian Catholic family on my mom's side because that's just laughable. It's like happy. We're just trying to survive. There's not enough. We have to work hard. And I always heard like, who do they think they are? Like spending money on that vacation or doing that. I don't know how they can afford that. You know, it's like always like judgy. If somebody was just enjoying life, it's like we all had to be in work, martyrdom, and struggle. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just so crazy. But that's how I was raised, you know, that viewpoint. So for me to find my own happiness felt indulgent. It felt, but yet that's what we're supposed to be. But see, that was pulled in two directions. It's so symbolic how my spine goes in two
Right.
directions, you know, and I think a lot of people feel that pull.
I do too. I do too. And it doesn't have to be this or that. I think there's such polarity that we're not allowed to meet in the middle because you have to pick a side so many times. Like, what do you stand for? You know, like what are you gonna jump behind and defend? You know, and I think the only thing I would fight to defend is a child or love. You know, like if I see something happening that's unjust to a child, I will jump up. And so I guess it's knowing your values, you know, calling in abundance, calling in for the highest good, and knowing what your values are, and not letting some system or society tell you what you need to stand up for. So that rings true to me. I was brought up Catholic too, and you'd always thought of Mary being this. She was so sacrificial, and she was so, you know, it was like that's brought when you're a young Catholic girl, especially being taught by nuns. They're always talking about Mary and this righteousness or this lack of joy. But as an adult, I've detached from that, and I've realized that Mary is actually very joyful. And when I connect to Mary in silence, or even hold my rosary that I've had since I was, you know, in my first communion, I got this beautiful rosary. The the energy that I get is empowerment, not sacrifice. And so I've shed these belief systems that have been, I call them like programming. It's like programming that's put on us that, maybe that served at one point, but, I think we're evolving, and I hope that we're evolving, that the children don't feel like they have to look at Mary and think that she was some just vessel or servant. She was very powerful. And she was a divine mother, and that's to be revered and not made to seem like she's subservient.
That's beautiful. I I never even thought about Mary because I got so hung up on Jesus and I thought how society has it so wrong in my point of view. When I had my grace state, which was after my own healing journey, a couple of mission trips where I went to Brazil and India to adjust people just for free, just to adjust people. We really entered some high vibrations, and coming back into my normal practice state, I ended up going into a grace state the state that I call grace because there was no words for it. All I knew is that all my problems dissolved. Life looked laughable. I realized we are love. It was a high vibration. It was just the highest vibration I ever felt, where you don't need any outside stimulation. You're just feeling this love. It's like falling in love, but there's nobody around. You're not in love with anybody else. It's just yourself and life. And I realized, oh, Jesus, don't we have it all wrong? People are worshiping him to come back and save us, or they're waiting for the second coming, and it's within us. He's trying to show us, hey, you can do what I do or more. He was an example. This is the state he lived in, and he was trying to show us that. But you can't make somebody rationally understand that. It's a feeling. It's when your vibration raises, that's our natural state. And I believe that's the Christ consciousness. And I believe that's what everybody is searching for. That's what I call my grace state. It radically changed everything for me, because once I found the grace state, I realized everything we're searching for is to find the grace state. So, you think you want more money. You think you want the perfect relationship, either the marriage. You think you want the perfect career or adventure or the next trip or the next shopping spree. And really, you're just looking for the high, because the high, even the partying mode, you got drinking and partying and drugs. You're looking for the high it gives you, because the high is actually our natural state. But because we're in these systems, in this matrix, in this society, that it has suppressed all that natural high. So that's what we're all searching for. Once you find that high, it's like, oh, this is who we are. This is the awakening. This is grace. Now I can come from this place in my alignment to my source and now let it manifest outward to create the life that I want, my desired life. So that's everything. It's a total reorientation. I know when people haven't felt the grace state, we all have our own evolutionary journey, and I always thought we have freedom of choice. And I always thought that until 3 years ago when they locked us down. And then I realized how there is something that's trying to suppress our human nature here. Like I lost my choice 3 years ago. And that's kind of when I went to the fight to speak up for our constitutional rights and our freedom rights that a lot of people didn't want to hear either. I lost my whole network that I built for the first 3 years in Miami because I was speaking up, because I was around everybody who was okay with being locked up. And that was horrifying to me. I'm like, why am I always I opened up my practice. I felt like nobody wanted to hear my message. And then I end up aligning and building a network of people who were okay with being locked up. I'm like, okay, what is my learning point here that I'm finding like the darkest points to plop myself into? I'm tired of this,
Yes, I can relate.
For it's a great state.
It's hard when you see things that other people don't, and you just want to shake them and say, look. But what's the powerful thing is when you reach what you described as your grace state, it's magnetic. And that's part of creation, is magnetizing the electricity. And the magnetism and the electricity working together is what liberates. And something else that you made me think of was, when these people are going on binges or people are addicted, you no longer, if you have a state of grace, you no longer judge that person as an addict. They just want to be their their divine self, and they don't know how else to get there. So you have compassion.
I actually have more respect for someone who at least they know, like I'm thinking the people we want to label alcoholics or whatever, I'm like, well, at least they're trying to get out of the matrix because they feel a high there. I have more respect for that than the people who are like living this humdrum every day, what they call a structurally, like a socially proper life, and they're dying inside. And they're too afraid to rock the boat to get out of it. You know, it's like I changed my perspective. I'm like, oh, these people are partying because at least they feel the high there. They can let go.
Mm-hmm.
And these other people who are just living these in quiet desperation, forget it, you know?
Right. So I believe that the light workers are here to shine their light and show an example, and not to convert anybody. It's to show what's possible. And once your light is shining the way yours does, and you're sharing your story through your book, it's just a wonderful book. I could read it in an afternoon. I was upset. I couldn't get more done. And so I'm excited to finish it. But it's just, being raw, sharing what you went through, and letting people know that there are choices, and you don't have to just plug into this matrix. And, I do, sorry. I had a friend tell me yesterday that, well, she was channeling Orion, and he assured us that the entities or the individuals who are making judgments based on greed that's hurting humanity, they will have their reckoning, and it was said that they will be taken for rehabilitation because they are ill. So we don't need to judge. We don't need to judge these people who are making decisions about other people's health care without their best interest at hand. They will have their reckoning. But it's a calling for humanity to say, stop. I'm precious, and what can I do? Because I don't want to cover up the symptom with another pill, and I don't want to watch these commercials where they speak at 500 miles an hour of all the side effects that seem worse than the disease that you're supposed to be taking it for. I mean, if you really listen to these commercials, and I try not to watch a lot of TV because I don't have the patience for it. It gets me sort of irritated.
Totally know what you're saying. My son and I, he's 17. We make fun. It's fun because you have to laugh because we hear these commercials and I'm like, how is it? This is how we're living in a circus world. They're spending billions of dollars to put that ad on. And it'll say, if you're feeling depressed, even with this medication, you can take this other medication to feel better. And then that's one small part with this happy scene. Then the rest is all the negative side effects, including you may have a tendency to commit suicide.
Yeah, suicidal thoughts. Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, we're living in a clown world. This is crazy.
And it's all right out. If you start looking critically, it's all laid out. The contradictions are completely there all the time. It's just really paying attention. So,
when I started chiropractic it was just open the door to my spiritual journey, because then I started finding tools to get myself out of the matrix and really find my heart center. But one of the things in the beginning, it was like my mom would always watch the news, and I'm like, turn that off. How do you watch that news? It is just one negative thing after another. And when you realize you're programming your mind with it, like I only wanted to put good stuff in because I wanted to get rid of all the stuff that I didn't need and really fill myself with positive energy, and I could feel just the negativity of the news. And that was over 20 years ago. And to see that it literally has people locked in and programmed, like people believe what the news says. And now I realize, I just thought they focus on the negative. Now I realize it's just propaganda. Like they're filling you with an agenda of how they want you to think. I never realized it was so sinister. I just thought it was so negative. But when you're in a higher state, you can't listen to that. So I just want people to think about that. When you're listening to that news, if you're taking that in, that means you're in a low vibration. If that feels good to you, or you think you're being informed, you got a lot of work to do because you're really in a low vibration. If you can't feel how toxic it is, I just can't believe people still watch that. That blows my mind.
Right. And I think that the ratings have been changing, and if you look at different statistics for things that used to be really popular to watch, it's not as popular anymore. And I
That's good.
appreciate that your son is on board with you, because my I have my oldest son, Reese, and he is like, he'll call it out. He'll be watching NFL football and he's like, this game is rigged. Look, they'll say something, the announcer will say something, and then the exact opposite will happen, or they'll allude to something happening, and then, 5 minutes later it happens, and it's like, how does this happen? The chances are, so he really is critical, and
How old
he
is your
gets
son?
upset. He's 20.
That's awesome.
He's 20. And I have a 17-year-old too, who just laughs it off. He's, I do think it's important to laugh and not take it seriously. And,
You have to, or you'll
just,
go crazy.
it's really important. It's really important to see. And it's not that you're making fun of something, you're making fun of a system. And, it's in our mass consciousness. Like, we can't ignore it. We can't say, oh, that's them. You have to embrace it and laugh and try to transmute it, because that's dealing with it.
That's right.
Not letting it stick. Oh, we're I love how you're speaking my language.
Yes, you are speaking mine as well.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about the Constitution, and you're fighting up for, standing up for the Constitution, and you're in a very multicultural place in Miami. I mean, it's funny because when I visit Miami, they ask where I'm from, and I'm like, well, I'm from a different country. I'm from Georgia. And they always laugh because it's like Miami's its own little
Yeah,
world.
it is.
So, well, how have you found new friends that want to talk about our constitutional rights, or do you think that people who are new to this country, they appreciate the Constitution more? I mean, what's your take on it?
I've seen a mix. I think there should be more people who are new to this country who should appreciate the Constitution more. That kind of angers me a little bit. I'm like, great, you're here, but you don't want to stand up or speak up for our rights. I have a lot of people who are awake, not just in Florida, but they're awake, but they won't put themselves out there. They don't want to wreck their reputation. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to wreck their business. And I thought, if we lose our freedom, you're not going to have any of those things. It really has just made me pause. It's taken my breath away, to be honest, to see aspects of people. And I don't mean to be judgy, but if we all had the courage to stand up, this would have been over. Everybody wants to play this game that we're going to conform, or we're going to stay silent and just do what we have to do to get through this. Well, I can't. I can't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just look at Oliver, oh gosh, I forget his last name. He's a country singer he's had over 1 million listens to every single one of his Rich Man from Richmond,
I heard of that, but I didn't watch it.
But I mean, it's the antithesis of what you're saying. These people want to stay safe and they want to just comply. But here's this man who's just like, what's going on? He just sings from his soul about how he just feels oppressed. And that's his whole thing, is speaking out. And he's getting recognition. They offered him a $3 million record deal. And he's like, no, or 6 million. I'm probably missing the number because I'm not a numbers person, but they offered him some crazy number. And he's like, no, you won't buy me. I'm not being bought. And he's recognized and he's celebrated. And I think the more and more we have these people who are just wanting to be their authentic selves show up. I mean, he's having more affluence than he ever would just complying and going to his job in a coal mill, or, a factory, or driving a truck. He's and it's because he was willing to step outside the box. So, I mean, yeah, people may think that, but then you can show them individuals who are shining and being abundant.
So totally. I'll give you my background. This is how non-political I was. In 2000, I just was coming back from a trip from India, We were in the airport. We just landed. It was right after, I guess it was the November 2000 election. And I hear on the TV in the airport that Bush was elected. And I said to my friend John, I'm like, wasn't Bush already president? And he looked at me and he's like, what is wrong with you? It's the sun. And I don't follow that crap. I'm like, it's all lies. Like, I knew it was just an evil I didn't follow. I didn't follow politics. I didn't follow news. Not that I didn't want to understand. But every time I watch something on TV, a debate, I'm like, they're not even getting to the bottom of anything. They go in circles. I was never one party or the other, Republican or Democrat. I was always independent. I voted. The only thing I voted for was I did vote at my first election. I voted for Ross Perot because I knew we needed a businessman at the time. Saw the difference there, but then I wouldn't pay attention, you know. But I knew health freedom. I knew there was a very corrupt medical world we lived in because I experienced it. I knew our educational system did not prepare us for real life. I was really studying money because I wanted to get to the root of what was enslaving us. And I understood the corruption of the Federal Reserve. I had a lot of pieces. So I also knew that there was something not right. Like when 911 happened, that people said, oh, it was probably an inside job. Our government probably did it. I said, oh, yeah, I believe that. This was when it first happened. I had no problem believing, oh, that probably was an inside job. So my mind never had a hard time believing that there was an outside evil, you know, but I didn't focus on that because I knew I had choice. I wanted to create my own reality. I believed the power was within, and I was looking for answers to build my life the way I wanted it to be. When they locked us up 3 years ago, I was horrified. I'm not gonna lie. The first 6 weeks, I thought concentration camps are next, and these, excuse my French, dumbasses are going to go right in. They're going to send us right to the concentration camp. All the people around me, they didn't care if they put the mask on their face. They didn't care about being locked up. They're hiding from some germ, right? They don't even know. It was never even, none of it was real. And I knew, because I don't follow the medical world. So this was a very like deep part for me. Like I saw through this illusion and nobody else did. People were attacking me for speaking up. And I thought, I have 20 years in a health background. They don't. And they're telling me I'm crazy when I'm calling this out. I'm like, we're under a mass psychosis here. So I just went searching. I went down the rabbit hole deeper to connect dots. I was looking for people who were standing up. And it made me start studying the Constitution. I took a couple of constitutional courses. And when you understand the Constitution, which I'm still a novice at it, I'm still learning. But everything becomes very clear. I'm like, oh, now I understand government. Because now, if they're not following the Constitution, it's corruption. So basically, once you understand the Constitution, you see that we have a bunch of mass criminals running our world right now, especially in the United States. It's global. But we have become numb that there are people enslaving us with the taxation, the income tax, all these things that are not constitutional, that have really suppressed our high vibration as humans. And it's been done for a reason, but it's time for us to take our power back. If everyone just take a constitution, start learning about the Constitution, you'll know how to get into, and I realize everything's local. You get involved with your local county, understand what your commissioners and your mayor is doing, how important the sheriff is, because the sheriff can protect you from all federal government overreach. And if we start solidifying our counties again, that's where the power is. Then it's the state. Then it's the federal. The federal government and the president really only have a tiny, tiny bit of power. Versus, I think it's been flipped. People think the president has all this power. I mean, I kind of thought that. It's not. It's the local county government. It's we, the people, who have the power. And that's the beauty of it, that Constitution was there to protect our natural God-given rights. That's it. So that there no government can come overreach and take them away. And what was horrifying to me is I really, really got to the bottom of the economy in 2018 to 2019. It took me years, from real estate investing that I did, that the market crashed, having small businesses, building an online business, all these things I was doing. I wanted to understand the flow of money. And it really came to a head right before lockdown. And I lost my train of thought there, but I realized how
So
that,
about we were talking about local government and finances and how knowing your right, your constitutional rights,
yeah,
and then you're talking about your business and knowing the
yeah, the business,
economy.
like when you understand how government interferes with even the flow of money. Like
Mm.
people want to blame capitalism. I'm like, no, we don't have real capitalism in this world. We have a socialistic form of economics. It's called Keynesian economics. I understand Austrian economics. That's a free market system. If we had that, we wouldn't have these booms and busts. The booms and busts, the government has us believing that they're saving us from the booms and busts. They're creating the booms and busts where the small people, the middle class, the average person is losing everything. Stock market, the housing, all this stuff. It's all set up. So to really set yourself up to come out of this, it's a lot. But like people need to understand their basic rights. Like it's for we the people to protect our natural rights, and we do have the power by getting involved locally. And I think if more people were informed in that,
Mm-hmm.
we could change the whole world, county by county, going local again.
Right. And that was one thing that was really illuminated to me was the power of consent. And when my son's school, he goes to a small private school, but when the masks came down, I said, well, what if I don't consent? And I pulled up consent law, and I sent some emails and I made some phone calls, and the health of my child um, was really important to me. And I realized that him breathing in his own, carbon dioxide, and, with a restricted nasal passage, he has a problem with his nasal passage. So it wasn't, it's just constricting his education and his well-being. And, I'm paying for this school. And I felt like I had a really solid, ground to say something. And he got an exception, but then he didn't want to be the one kid who didn't have to wear a mask. So then we had a lot of good talking points, but people just look into the law of consent, that your sheriff can help you with that too. And it's unlawful to restrict somebody's ability to breathe. It really is. I mean, it's a basic human right.
Get back. You know how we're watching the commercials that tell us you have this symptom, but then this drug can actually make you worse. This has become accepted. The problem is we have people in power, including sheriffs, who don't know what their true position is. They don't understand the Constitution either. So we're in trouble there. We have sheriffs. There are many good ones, of course, that understand their true nature, their Constitution, and they're fighting for that. But there's a lot that are bought, like the police chiefs. They're all embedded together with the politicians and the commissioners and the people running on their own, just lining their own pockets, being bought by an agenda. So you have to really sift through who's doing the right thing. And so, but once you understand who's following the Constitution, who's not, you can see the evil and you can call it out. And you want to either step up yourself, shine the light on it that they're not following the Constitution, either run for a position yourself or vote for somebody who is going to run for the right position. But then we go into the whole thing where our elections are not clean.
Right? Like
It's
yes.
just layer after layer. But I believe we are. I believe we're transforming all this. I do believe that we're getting to a place where our consciousness is raising. We're empowering ourselves again. I think this is the awakening of humanity that we're going through right now. It really is amazing to see what's happening. You can go into despair that it is so frustrating and it's so dark, but at the same time, look what's being uncovered, and look how many people are questioning the structures, the systems, like never before. So it is an exciting time to be here.
What was it? The Secretary of Energy has just been called out for investing in solar panels and solar energy right before a lot of money was given toward for that kind of, it's like this is, and I was like, okay, there's one domino, and it's going to be one domino at a time, and it's going to start at the bottom, and it's going to keep, like you said, it's going to start at your city, your county, your schools. If you couldn't take your child out of public school, you need to be involved in what's going on there. I mean, I really believe our children are our best our most precious resources, and we, it's critical to know what's going on in your schools. And
Can I tell you, once I started understanding the Constitution, I started attending the school board meetings in Miami-Dade, and I saw, well, I kept my child out of the school system. He wanted to go for a while, but it was always free choice. Our educational system, there's 1,000 more reasons that I would keep somebody out of school now, but my reason for keeping my son out of school was I felt like I was in a prison every day of my life, and I was an honor student. I was an overachiever. I studied all the time. I worked my butt off. It did not prepare me for life at all. I knew I was wasting my time in school, but my mom kept saying, you'll see, you'll need this when you get out. Well, I'm almost 50 years old, and I don't need any of it. I still say I didn't learn a thing that I needed in real life. I had to relearn and unlearn everything that was taught to me. So I wanted my son to just learn what was important. I wanted him to learn financial freedom. He already knew health freedom. But I started speaking up at the school boards, and I saw evil on that school board. They were all sitting up there masked. They had these people didn't think for themselves. It was like robotic. And I thought, I cannot believe this has gotten to this point. I knew something was wrong with our system, but to see where it's at right now was horrifying to me. And, I saw also how many poor parents were questioning. When I had my son, I was fully educated as a chiropractor, right? It was easy for me that I had a home birth. He never needed to go to a medical doctor. Not many people are in that position, right, to make that choice. But it was so sad for me. It's always been about the kids for me, because I saw the birth trauma happening, all the unnecessary ear tubes, the antibiotics. It was only 12, your wellness checks that they make you go to.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that in quotes, it's like to put poison, let me go see if I'm well and add poison to my body.
Right.
But now kids are receiving 72. And we wonder why the autism rate is off the chart. Because,
well, yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I didn't know a single person who was autistic when I was growing up.
Me either.
Not one.
Me either. So they thought they had to do all these vaccines to get in school. And they didn't know that they could just sign a waiver and say, I'm taking responsibility for my child. You're not being held accountable for me, then, and you can go to school. And so I always thought you always have free choice, but people are afraid to question the system. So there was all this stuff that I saw. People had so many choices and they weren't exercising their rights, And to see what happened 3 years ago, it's like we reached this pinnacle where people didn't realize they could just say no.
And why did our mass conscious need people just keeling over for no reason? Like, why did we need that? Because we were so asleep.
Yes.
And I'm saying we were just so asleep.
But it's interesting. It connected so many dots. I'm like, oh, this is the system. This is what I've been fighting. Because I always felt like I usually lost people. Like I always end up going too far in my thinking for the average person. My friends, society, like they could come with me a little bit, but then I'd always push it a little bit more and I'd lose people,
Yeah.
And I realized, oh my gosh, look what I've been up against. It became so clear 3 years ago. Like my whole life made sense. I'm like, I came for this time. Like this is, I've been living in the awakened world, waiting for everybody to catch up, and I'm like, this is head, but look what I've been up against. It's truly, it takes my breath away to watch this whole thing.
Well, I honor your spirit and your clarity of mission, and just everything about you is just amazing, and your bravery. You're just so brave, and I know it's exhausting. I've had plenty of conversations where people just rolled their eyes and, I was like, oh, crazy Julie. And I always tease my husband. I said, I'm 10 years ahead. I say something, you wait 10 years and you'll be like, okay, Jules, I get it now.
That's right. It's interesting. I was talking to my cousin, and I know they always thought I came out a little extreme with how I raised my son. I went a little extreme, too natural, and we were talking, he's awake about the political stuff. And I said, how about, I said, Robert Kennedy's doing a lot of good speaking up. And he goes, oh, you really were ahead of your time. Like, it was almost like I got validation because back then, he just like, oh, okay, they're nice ideas.
She's like a little woo,
Right. A little
like you
woo-woo,
get
a
that.
little off.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, oh, you were saying that before even he came. I'm like, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay. So yeah, when you say you're 10 years, I agree with you. I know exactly what you mean.
And it's okay. It's okay. And it gives you, as I've gotten older, I have a lot more compassion and patience, and I realize that I don't even need to say anything.
You
I
know?
just be, and all the gifts that you've gotten for, your son has benefited and the
Yeah.
people around you have benefited. And it's your natural, it's your state to be protective and to cherish the things you love. And that's just how you're doing. You're showing up with it and you're going to continue. So I
You
applaud
know,
you.
it's interesting. I'm relearning compassion because I had to get to a place before the lockdowns where I had to accept that people had their own journey. I saw
Mm-hmm.
them making medical choices that I knew was going to make them sicker, but I had to respect their journey. And I stopped talking then, really. I just kind of let people do their things. I really wasn't speaking up about things anymore because it was just exhausting. And I thought everybody has their own journey. I just need to work on myself. But when lockdowns happened, I really was upset, of what happened. I really went into fighting mode for a couple years. It wore me out. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm definitely this year I saw the change once 2023 hit. I felt a shift within myself, and I don't know if it's because I felt something reach a critical mass in the world, or there was some kind of shift at least within myself where I'm going back to my spiritual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really working on myself, and now I'm understanding things on a deeper level. How we create, how to allow, how I'm pushing against, how I'm not, and I'm grateful for it. I feel more grace than I ever have now.
Mm.
So, sometimes in life, it is a journey, and we're here to have these full on experiences. But that's been really something for me to see too, how much those first couple of years I was in such fighting mode, and to see the difference of what I'm experiencing now. So I'm relearning my compassion and my grace and my spiritual side now.
I hold space for it. I see
Thank
it.
you.
And yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this with me and the audience. And, I really appreciate it. I will put a link to your website and your book. And, just honor the stages. I know that I went through grief, grief for humanity. When you start going down the rabbit holes and seeing what we've been through and, how is this necessary? And when you look at free will and then you just attach to your own free will and realize you got to do the best you can do, and maybe they're doing the best they can do, and that's grace, you know. So I
Well,
see that.
thank you for creating this space to have these enlightened conversations. I think it helps
Oh,
people helps us all to get through our own journeys and to raise the consciousness. So thank you for all you're doing. And you are a kindred spirit because you were able to hold the space while I share this kind of information. You're right there with me. You get it. So thank you.
mm-hmm. I honor you. Thank you,
I honor
sister.
you.